guys. So welcome to another podcast / video cast review of another movie. And since you guys have always wanted us to do the Korean horror or the Korean romance, which we'll probably do more, we thought we'd dive a little bit into Chinese actions and Japanese action co-production by the name of Fulltime Killer. Full-Time Killer is something that I have dwelled in the past on. It's an assassin movie. It's made of two assassins. One name is Tak, and the other one name is Oh. I'll be honest with you guys. I watch a lot of Chinese action flicks, and I can watch them over and over again. And if you tell me what the ending was, I have no idea. I watched this one, and I can tell you the ending. And I've watched this movie about 3 times, but after the first time I watch it, I love this ending. And we're not going to give you the ending because until you got to watch this to know the ending, but it is one of the best endings of any Chinese action flicks that I have seen. Now, Andy Lau is the most awarded actor in China ever, in the Chinese province, whether you're in Hong Kong or Taiwan or China, and deal with it, China. Taiwan does exist, and it throws a Taiwan actor out there just to flip you off. So you mainland people, if you're on TikTok, I know you can't discuss that, but Taiwan does exist.
I was impressed with how many languages they fit into this film.
And we'll definitely go. How many Chinese action, flicks have you seen? Did you watch them?
Not many, honestly. Probably only ones have been whatever you've exposed me to in the past.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever exposed you to them.
Oh well, there you go.
and that's the whole thing. And I'll probably say I might be, pulling some up. And the reason is because there was a time in my life. I don't know if you want to describe it as. I'm not going to say it because I feel it's very offensive, but I feel like there was a time in my life if I went to the video store, all I was going to rent was probably Japanese horror or Korean horror or Chinese action flicks. Like that was all I was going to rent. And they would started come out in video. Now, Andy Lau did this film first before Infernal Affairs. And I talk about Infernal Affairs because Infernal Affairs was the one that Americans redid and just put a bunch of big name actors in it and claimed it was theirs, where it was like an Andy Lau film. It's called, and Infernal Affairs is probably where Andy Lau's probably best film. But as we know, during this time, John Woo is becoming popular. He's the guy who did Face Off, and he worked a lot with Chow Yun-fat. And those films were getting very popular, and like Michael Bay was kind of, mixing some of that arts as well. And like John Woo, he didn't get the success that he thought he'd probably get in American films. He's probably back in, Hong Kong or, / China now making films still, but he had this, popularity at the time. And this is like right when that popularity is rising. So people were like craving that John Woo feel. And you get a lot of that John Woo film in this film, and again, like John Woo films we know is Face Off with John Travolta and Nicolas Cage and films like that. So you got that kind of vibe in this film, but you also got that Hong Kong video look in this film as well. And Japanese would do it as well, of the video, cameras that they were using. So let's get into it. What's this film about, Lucas?
So it's about a professional top grade assassin, and he is in conflict with another up on the rise, up and coming assassin, and they keep getting in each other's way of their work.
Right. But there's a reason why they eventually get into the way, because it doesn't really start out that way. Mm-hmm. I love these introductions of these characters. And one thing they did is they used 2 directors. So they have O's introduction first, right?
Yeah.
And there's another thing that it addresses as well, besides the fact, and of course, I like the whole, like I said, we watched Gross Point Blank, and this kind of dives into that because it takes like you can take the assassin job and apply it to any job technically. It's basically one guy who's kind of got natural talent. He's good at what he does, but he's losing passion for it. And you got another guy who is very wanting the fame more than he wants the money, and then he has a weakness, which is really great. I thought was a great writing into the story. And then, of course, a young lady who is seeking adventure. And it really ties into those three characters, and each character is introduced at the beginning, starting with how is he introduced to the first part of the film?
I think it was pretty much, correct me if I'm wrong, because I gathered, bits of this as it was being thrown at me.
Right.
It seemed like he was professional, knew what he was doing, but kind of lonely. I mean, he was hiring this girl to come clean his apartment, and he would watch her from the windows, and it just seemed like he was very cut off from reality outside of his, assassination world job thing. That's what I kind of gathered. Even though he was very successful, it seemed like he was kind of, like you said, kind of losing passion for it or wanting something a bit more.
Right. And like I said, we kind of dive into it like when we were watching Gross Point Blank. It had that kind of feeling, like, except for he's not seeing it would be neat if he got to see a therapist. I don't know how that would work out. But then you get
talk.
And and I'll go ahead and go over his character. He's more flamboyant, I guess I could say. And I mean that in a masculine way, because a lot of people have the stereotype of thinking that flamboyant is not masculine, but he's the type of guy. He wants to dress like an assassin. He watches a lot of movies. He's in the entertainment. He feels like he's got something to prove. And that's what I feel about
talk.
Like, I'm trying to think of a movie. There was a movie where somebody would mention somebody else's name and it would make him mad. I think that if Talk heard O's name, and we learned that when he goes to Singapore, that it upsets him because he's not on top. That's what I feel like.
Talk.
I gotta be on top, and he wants to be like, he got into it because he thought it was a cool thing in the movies kind of person. And a lot of people in careers do that. Like they'll, I want to be a so-and-so because so-and-so in a movie was. And then when they do it, a lot of times people say, well, this is what it's really like. I don't want to be part of it, but
talk.
He wants to be on top. It's like you said, he's got something to prove. And Albert Lee character, which I saw him in Contract Killers before this. And I really like him in Contract Killers. If you guys watch Contract Killers with Jet Li, the best character in there is not Jet Li. Jet Li's not that good of an actor. But Simon Yam is really good in this. And he is the author, but he works for Interpol at the beginning of the film. And Interpol, if you don't know, if you watch a lot of Chinese flicks, they're the FBI in most of your, Chinese film. And a lot of what they do is stopping pirating, because China just has a habit of pirating movies. It's like a drug, they don't have a drug addiction. They just have an addiction of pirating
movies.
So, and the thing is, Hong Kong is a port. Okay, so it's like Dubai. It's like the Dubai of Asian area. It's like you're going to deal with what Hong Kong. In other words, you can if you got a boat and you go to their harbor, you don't have to pay a tax. And that's the reason why everybody goes to, and people say, why does Hong Kong do that? Because they have everything there for sailors. And it's the same thing with Dubai, is you don't charge a tax when you bring your barge in, because They got everything for you. Like a lot of people don't want to deal with sailors because I'm sorry to say, you guys are a little rough. But the people who do want to deal with you, Dubai and Hong Kong are those places. And so I think that's the reason why, sets up his business there, because he can set up a tax-free shelter business, and I can hide out there in Hong Kong, because the way the Hong Kong police work is if you outrun the Hong Kong police, they're not going to chase you because they don't want to fill the paperwork out. That's just the way it is. It's like, and then if the British get onto them or the Chinese get onto them about drugs, they'll get involved in that because they want you to come to Hong Kong. It's like, but the thing is, once you get to Hong Kong, you're stripped down, no toothpaste, no nothing. So when you fly out of Hong Kong, you don't have to worry about going through customs because you're already dealt with customs in Hong Kong. So that's another thing too you have to deal with. So like when you fly into Hong Kong and your next stop is going to be Japan, you're stripped down to nothing. They take everything away. You fly into Tokyo. Tokyo says, "Oh, you just got back from Hong Kong."
What? Are you serious? I'm super gullible, so.
Yeah, it's because the reason is because you're flying everywhere from Hong Kong. So if you fly into Japan from Hong Kong, they're just pretty much gonna wave you in through customs
because all of it went on at Hong Kong.
Exactly, and that's why Dubai is set up too. Like if you go from Dubai to New York or Atlanta, they're gonna go because you're done. You've already been strip searched and anal searched and everything you can imagine.
Dang. I'm glad I haven't had to deal with any of that.
It's over with. You welcome to New York. Here's your cab or Uber and Lyft and go into your hotel. So that's kind of like the way Hong Kong is set up. So it's a great place if you're going to set up, but you got to have lots of money to do it. So O's got lots of money. It's a great place for him to hide out. And let's talk about a little bit. So this centers around O and having a housekeeper. And the reason why you would do that is obviously to make your place look like it's lived in while you're gone, because he's going all around the world. So it centers around that. So let's just go ahead and dive into our female character. Let's talk about a little bit about this female character. I keep on forgetting her name. I'm sorry about that. Kelly.
Miss Chin.
Yeah. Is it? Oh, Miss Chin. Okay, Kelly Lynn is Miss Chin. All right, I'm sorry. Miss Chin.
I think so. She moved to Japan from, I think it was Taiwan, and she's working at this video store. And she seems like a pretty collected and quiet person, and it's revealed that she has a little bit of a crush on Mr. O, but she's been working for him for about a year and is starting to like try and piece things together of like, why is he not here? Why does his apartment seem like it's never lived in and just kind of messed up on purpose? And she just seems to be looking for, as you said earlier, just some kind of adventure.
Yeah. And going back again, the main focus is Hong Kong, and I'm just going by what I saw in the film, is she runs a Japanese video store in Hong Kong.
Oh, yeah. I thought we kept switching locations. This was kind of confusing.
Let me explain. I think the three main places are Singapore, which is which is Talk's manager, where he works out of. Hong Kong is where O works out of, but he picks up his jobs in Korea. Makes sense?
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
And all this is a 4-hour radius. And like I said, that's where it gets, that's one of the only weaknesses of the film is a transitioning. But technically, yeah, you can go to Korea in 4 hours. No, you can leave Korea and come to Hong Kong in 4 hours and make it in the same day, which he does in this film. And so I can give him, but the problem is the transitioning. You don't think about. he's flying from Korea to Hong Kong, but he technically is when he's picking up his jobs. But Miss Chin, like you said, she's running this video store. She knows Japanese because she's in this Japanese video store, and probably a lot of Japanese men are coming in there, and Japanese women, whatever. Well, and they're getting videos, and this is VHS era. This film, as far as when it was filmed, as my understanding was in 2000, but it would be like 2003, 2001, and around that era before it got really released. And guys in Malaysia, they wanted the film's ending changed. I'm so sorry if you're Malaysian because you missed out on a great ending. So
I read about that.
Yeah, it's a shame because I don't understand, like I said, it's hard when you're dealing with a lot of these politics because, you got Malaysia, you got Singapore, and of course, Malaysia is in the introduction of the film. And I'll go ahead and start this out. It dives into two things. It dives a little bit into the expat world because at the beginning, O is assigned to kill somebody in Malaysia. And I think one of the reasons why they were targeting a Malaysian audience, like, hey, it's Malaysia, we're in the film, yay! And so there's this Japanese guy like saying, hey, I went to school with you. I got a sushi restaurant and all these things. And I was like, I don't know you. And it's like, yeah, and the guy's like, no, you know me, I went to school with you, everything like. And then he talks about, you saw I'm so lonely. And that's to say, they dealt with like, expats, like I said. It's one thing if you're, say, Chinese and you're starting a restaurant in Singapore, or you're Japanese and you're starting a restaurant in Malaysia. That's one thing. And I know the cultures are different and the languages are different. And you become isolated. So it kind of deals with that issue as well. Because that's another loneliness you got to add to. O is Japanese and he's in Hong Kong, which is a totally different morality viewpoint in Japan versus Hong Kong. Like I said, this is based on a book, but it has kind of a manga feel to it. But China's not really big on the whole manga thing. And it's like there is that feelings a lot of times, like, growing up, with the Chinese culture is there's some Chinese where it feels like, oh, those island people. You're talking about Japan. They can't help it. Those are island people. or it's like, like Taiwan. If you watch some Chinese films, they don't want to acknowledge Taiwan because they don't want to acknowledge it as a country because they feel it's part of China, And it's got 3 million army. It's got the third largest army in the world. It's got a strong government. It's got a strong economy. But in a Chinese film, they'll say, and this girl came from the islands of China. Basically, they're either from Hong Kong or Taiwan. So this is the thing that drives you nuts, is the first thing they explain is that girl. And I'm from Taiwan. I'm like, whoa!
I had no idea about any of that. I don't know if it's because I really don't watch Asian films and know much about, but that's really interesting.
But it's very ballsy to start out like, here you got a country that doesn't want to recognize another country, and then you got this young lady and then, like I said, Hong Kong, there's certain people who want to stay with the British colony, obviously, and some people, they end up being under the Chinese rule, and some people wanted to go with China because, like I said, the triangle, if I talk about the triangle, there's a movie, the triangle basically is the Trinity, and the Chinese Trinity is Hong Kong, Taiwan, and China and everything like that. But to me, it's like, I'm more into having, like, if Hong Kong is the way they are, and China's promised that they're going to leave Hong Kong alone and let them do their thing because they have to, or like I said, you're not going to have oil ships park in Hong Kong. But Taiwan, they can't do nothing about it because they've got a strong army and they got the support of like United States or whatever. So they can't really do anything with Taiwan. It's like, but some Chinese feel like, oh, they should be part of China and everything. No, They don't have to be. Let them do their thing. You know, let them be independent. It should be that simple, but it's not. You know, like, but anyways, regarding all that, so it's very ballsy. You got this girl who's straight out. I'm from Taiwan. I speak Japanese, and I live in Hong Kong. So deal with it, China. So she's pretty smart, you know.
Yeah.
But she's an introvert, and pretty much, and we like her characters. The actress there, she was signed with when Michelle Yeoh started her entertainment company. She signed with Michelle Yeoh, and everybody knows Michelle. Michelle is like one of the biggest Hong Kong. She's on Star Trek, but she's one of the biggest Hong Kong actresses there is. So getting onto that, so we've established is, he's a Japanese assassin who's good at what he does. Tak is very flamboyant and struggle. What's your feelings about Tak? I mean, how do you, like I said, I see him as someone who feels like he wants to be the best, but he just can't achieve that level of success.
He seemed okay. Well, my first impression of him in the video store wearing all those masks was, this guy is a freaking creep. That was my first impression of him, and that didn't go away for a while, okay? Like, especially so in this movie, he asks the girl to go on a date with him, and they do, and he's still wearing the masks. I was so upset. I was like, if you show up to pick me up for a date and you're wearing this creepy mask, like, not only am I not going on this date with you, I'm probably calling the police. So, like, that was my first thing. Okay, but eventually he takes off the mask and he's beautiful. It's okay, whatever, he's an assassin, it's pretty, whatever. But it seemed like he was very, I want to say cocky, but he had the skill to back it up. You know what I mean? Because he was this up-and-coming assassin. He wasn't on the level of Mr. O, but he was hungry. That's what he wanted, and he knew what he wanted, and he was gonna, play every little note that he had to in order to get anything and everything he wanted. So I had a lot of mixed feelings about this character, but at least he seemed pretty well-rounded and developed. You could see his motives and everything.
And here's my take on why I think she went with him. Was one thing, he was Chinese, right? Yeah. And she's got Chinese origins. And I think that's one connection. And then number two, like you said, she's looking for a little adventure. I can imagine, like, you're running a Japanese video store and these Japanese guys are coming in, or Japanese sailors are coming into Hong Kong port or whatever, and you're tired of them. You don't, because you get to see them all the time, right? But here's this guy, he's got this Chinese vibe about him, and then of course she's looking for a little adventure. I think that's the reason why. And she knew the movie, like, she watches movies too because she's a video store. I think that's important too to think about. I think a lot of the adventure she's watching, because she mentions Leon, which is another assassin film, which I'd probably say Leon kind of started the whole assassin craze, but it really goes back to La Femme Nikita. You get La Femme Nikita and then Leon, and those films kind of start the whole assassin craze. And those films are both French, and they're really great films. I recommend people watching them. And so you have those films that influences a little bit of this, and then of course she's watched those films, and then of course Point Break is the film that reason why he's wearing the mask, because he watched Point Break, and I think that connection there too. And I think one thing too is with young ladies, y'all young ladies who watch this, I'm talking to y'all young ladies that watch this, you don't care about looks. I'll be honest with you. I mean, most of y'all, unless you're like really immature, like you're 13, 14 years old, you're looking at BTS. Oh, they're so cute. Oh my gosh, they look like little girls. I love them. Yeah, you're 13, 14 years old. But when you're 18 or 19, I'm sorry to say, the girls, here's your confidence level. Like you're 13, 12, and you're like, your confidence level is like this. And here, when you get to 17 or 18 years old, what happened to my confidence? I miss you, confidence. And then you start looking for security. And I think, or danger is another thing, because, whatever, just something to get instead of that same thing over again. And that's the reason why I can justify her attraction to this guy, because we already know she's got this adventure ideology. Of course, she's never really been on an adventure, but she wants to experience an adventure. And one thing I love about the Asian films is how when a character grows, like her character grows in this, how their looks change always. Like if you watch, it's great. It's like, that's the other thing about, if you watch like American films.
It's one of those ugly ducklings, like finding their place in the world, turning into a swan kind of thing.
Well, here's what I'll say. At least you know that you're dealing with a different character.
Yeah.
The problem with American films is, and I believe like when you grow up, you do change in looks as well as your thoughts. And I think that needs to be portrayed. It's like you watch Gwyneth Paltrow, no matter what she changes, she's still gonna be the same looking character, whether she grows or not. I give the Asian films, most of them that I watch, when the character advances or grows, they change in looks. And I think that's one thing you Americans need to learn about filmmaking, so that we, the audience, understand the character is growing.
That's a really good take on that, because it really does show progression, more of a linear progression. It's just a visual cue.
She's changed. Well, you'll watch her in the film. She'll change from this shy little girl into this woman, because all these events are and like things like this around you actually happen. It would make you feel different, and I think that's kind of unique. I think it's really great. So I'm not saying she's the best female character out there. I will say this though, I don't hate her. I love her to death. That's what makes me so mad, is like, if you're going to make a female character, at least make her where I can have empathy for her.
Yeah.
I empathize with this young lady. She, and dudes are like, well, girls are like, well, she sleep. Dude, she's conflicted. She's caught between a sandwich that she don't know what to do, and that's like growing up. It's like, you don't know which, there's two roads that verge on your life, you don't know which one to choose. And this is the truth with her. And a lot of people say, well, I don't know how to have it. Hey, look, that's life. You don't know if you're going to be with a talk. You don't know if you're going to be with an O.
And she was really rolling with the punches as they came too, which was really impressive. I feel like a lot of like characters, they just make them so two-dimensional. There's just not much to them, but like I feel like there was a lot going on with her.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You empathize with her because you feel. I mean, for a person who's masculine, or I would say male, I empathize with this character. Like I weep when she's hurt. I get excited when she's excited. I understand where she's coming from. Mm-hmm. And I think, my personal opinion, I think O and Talk represents two roads in a person's life when they're maturing. That's what I think the metaphor is. Usually when they do that, they try to use the prodigal son metaphor. I don't think so. I think this is like growing up, and you're deciding where you want to go, and sometimes fate decides for you. And I think that's what I like about these films like this. So where are we at? All right, so let's talk about the detective. Like I said, this is not his best performance. I've seen him in, if you watch Contract Killers with Jet Li, he's better in that. The character Albert Lee in this movie, Another thing is there's this young lady, Sherry Ying, who's just completely gorgeous, and they are Interpol, and they're chasing O, and they're chasing Talk, but I want to say that it starts out just after O, an obsession. So what's your take on all that? I mean, like I said, this is not his best performance, but what's the metaphor you feel with those two characters, the Interpol characters?
I don't know. It got kind of confusing. I didn't know while I was watching like what I understood they were detectives, but I didn't know what side. I was getting confused between Interpol and whatever management was supposed to be.
Yeah.
The ones released in the newspapers, the hidden messages in newspapers and stuff. So I don't really know those characters.
And see, this is one of the weaknesses, is like, because we're supposed to technically be going through Albert Lee's character, and he's writing a book, folks, and he's supposed to be the author. So, but he doesn't have his perception. There's actually more of O's and Talk's perception, and then we have this main protagonist, which is Miss Chen. So, and I'll be honest, if they were taken out of the film, except for the ending, if Albert Lee's ending is not in there, which is the most important part of the film, they don't really play a pivotal part. I mean, that they're kind of just villains of action, I guess you would say. Like, we need a little action, let's put them in there.
One of those on your tail kind of thing. I feel like the rest of the movie was all Mr. O and Talk, really.
Right, exactly. But you do need Albert Lee's character at the end of the film, or you don't get this great ending, which I love this ending. So they're telling O, and they're because I think he's obsessed because he really wants O really, really bad. And one part is they go to a library because this assassination happens. And in that process, he finds out that, because on the computer, that somebody's already been searching for Talk on the computer. And that's where we have this scene where they're looking for O, but O is already out of the library before you can get him. And then, of course, we get into more of this. So let's go ahead. From here on, guys, this is spoilers alert, because we're going to dive into reveals that you need. So if you don't want to hear spoilers right now, turn this off, watch the film, come back, and we'll discuss spoilers. So, and I think, because I have such respect for the ending of this film, I feel I need to tell you, because this is one, I would say, top 5 endings of all films I've ever seen. I love this ending. And I think if this movie did not have this strong an ending, I probably wouldn't be discussing it. But our first reveal, and again, I'll throw this out here, and you understand, like I said, he's traveling to Korea to get his jobs. Talk is traveling to Singapore to get his jobs. So, the manager who is providing jobs for, go ahead and tell them what happens. For in Korea, tell us what happens.
Don't they pretty much set him up to get caught?
And what else? Why would O's manager do that?
I wasn't sure.
Talk's brother is O's manager.
Oh yeah, it got so confusing. I'm sorry.
All right,
I do remember that now.
Right. So this is really the kink in the armor, or the chink in the armor, that is a slowly descending to and so the way Talk gets his job is through a newspaper. And so there was 2 ads, and you just combined the ads together to get his jobs. And his Singapore managers. He had enough of that, so he kills his Singapore manager. Of course, we knew that was probably going to happen. And so setting up O means that O is on the run from everybody from Interpol to Talk. So he has to leave his apartment, hides Miss Chen there. And let's be honest, now this movie starts revealing things.
Mm-hmm.
We get flashbacks of the former housekeeper, and we find out that she died because someone had found O out because of it. And it's a dangerous work, obviously. And this kind of ties everybody together. Mm-hmm. And, you know, Miss Chen is taken over for her friend. That was her best friend, was the housekeeper. So Miss Chen and talk a little bit about the sniper scene a little bit to try to set up what's going to happen in the future.
So he is pretty much trying to get her interested in him and turning on his charm and pretty much being like, look how cool I am. I'm an assassin guy. I got this gun. You want to see this? Gun? You want to hold this gun? So he's got her like holding and aiming the gun, and it's supposed to be this like, you know, that's when she comes up with the comment like, this isn't Leon. Like, I've seen Leon. Like, you're not special. I know what you're doing, kind of thing. So that was pretty funny. And he has her aiming at this civilian and tells her that the gun is empty and has her shoot it, and it goes off, and luckily it doesn't get the person, but like he's basically, you know, kind of showing her how to use this gun and kind of getting her used to the danger and, you know, I guess death if you're shooting at someone. It was a pretty intense scene, I thought, but it does lead into a scene later. I didn't know if you want me to discuss that.
No, go ahead, because this is spoilers alert, man.
So there's at one point where she picks up a gun where she's with O now, and they're running from Interpol. I don't know where they're running. Yeah. And she picks up this gun and she's like, I can use this. And she does use it to, you know, to help, which, you know, she learned from Talk, kind of. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, a great payoff. Which is something you people need to know.
Yeah, so it shows that her time spent with Talk was contributing to helping Mr. O in the end, which is kind of what she was striving for from the beginning.
Right, and helping the story as well.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's talk about Talk's weakness, which I think is brilliant to the story writing. So we find out, and guys, Miss Chen makes out with Talk. So they are bumping uglies. And what happens?
I don't remember.
This is where we reveal his weakness. And I also
don't remember his weakness.
Oh my gosh, you can't. Oh my gosh, that's the most important part of the film. All right, so folks, he has epilepsy.
Oh yeah.
Right. And as you know, and let me tell you something, it's more common with Asian people than it is with whites or blacks. It just is. It's like Asian people, for some reason, just flashing lights bother them really, really bad. And I will say it affects maybe a quarter of the Asian community. It's so bad that in fact, when we got our Nintendos, there would be this warning, don't sit close to TV set. And that's because of you Asian people. It wasn't me. And it's like, the thing is that makes you so mad. They know this. They know it's going to cause seizures in young, you know, Asian people. But they still have the balls to do. I was like, there is a Pokemon episode, folks, that is pulled from Japan that they cannot watch because there was flashing lights. Pikachu went flashing, all discotheque, and caused a lot of Asian kids to have seizures.
That's terrible.
It is terrible. Can you imagine a mom or dad walking in and your kids like just going on the floor like that?
After watching Pokemon, that's terrible.
So
wow.
now we Americans, we can watch it all day. It's Pikachu disco, and it's fine. But for somebody, like I said, most of I would say 25% of the Asian community causes seizures, and this is what is his weakness. And interesting because they use the lovemaking thing and that combination. And because when you're lovemaking, you're usually naked and you're very vulnerable. And they also are confronted. She knows now that he's got this weakness. So it's a very powerful scene. I think it sets up one of the best endings of all time. So that's Talk's really weakness, and that's the one reason I think he wants to be the man. Like he's got something to prove, despite this quote disability, I can do this, feeling. It makes him more want to do this. So O is set up and by Talk's brother, like I said, his manager, and it causes, of course, the danger of Miss Chen and the danger to O. So O makes his retribution or revenge, I should say, towards the manager, doesn't kill him, sends a message basically to him. Talk comes in and says, that's very dishonorable for you to do that. But, Talk's brother is like, look, honor is between two brothers as well, so you've got a conflict of honor there. What rules in the honor book, I don't know. Do you is that like one of those things where it's to your interpretation? Who knows? I haven't read the honor book in a long time. It's like section 34 says if your
bro
brother
code in the honor book
over assassin brother. Okay, honor for brother first. Okay, so because so many people now are more involved because of Talks and O didn't want to be a part of all this in the first place. He just
right.
It's like, but guess what? The problem is this is a job with lots of dangers, and one of the dangers is like a guy says at the beginning, eventually you're going to rub somebody out. That's what his brother, Talk's brother says. And so going back to Japan. So Miss Chen and O have to be on the run. But the thing is, we get to this level, now O's apartment is raided. O's secret apartment is raided where he was having a place to hide out. His hideout is raided. So now we get to the scene where Andy Lau's character Talk is confronting the Interpol detective, and do you want to go over that with me?
Yeah. So wait, what?
Talk is facing the Interpol detective, and see, this is after. Now, one thing, Talk has saved O and Miss Chen's life because Talk obviously wants his face-to-face with O, and he doesn't want the Interpol to catch him. So.
Oh, okay. So
yeah.
So basically, this is when O and Miss Chen are pretty much surrounded by the police, right?
Right.
So Talk pretty much comes in with a sniper and starts taking out some of those people so they have an opening to fight and to get out, so that they can have that face-to-face interaction, one-on-one stuff or whatever, because that's been his goal of this movie, has been to show up O and to, I guess, to kill him, because he wants his fame and he wants his position and he wants anything that he has.
Right. But he faces the detective at the Interpol headquarters there in Hong Kong, and what proceeds there. And it's after that.
Is it with Talk?
Yeah, Talk comes there to face the fate.
He goes in there and he wants to retrieve the Snoopies, right?
Yeah.
He wants to retrieve these little Snoopy collection that O was getting for Mrs. Chin. With every job that he would go on, he'd bring a little Snoopy back from the place. And Talk got the one that was missing in the set to add to the little set because he wanted to be a big shot, I guess. I don't know the real purpose. It just seemed like he was showing off to me.
Well, I feel like here's my take on the Snoopies. I mean, because he's an assassin. O is an assassin, right? So he goes to all these countries. And he brings back a Snoopy for each country he goes to. But he's never done an assassination in Hong Kong. So when Talk shows up with the Hong Kong Snoopy, which is the final of the collection, meaning that he's going to kill O in Hong Kong.
That's so cool. I didn't connect that.
Right. And like I said, you remember the British Interpol agent, she's like looking, and this is what's so funny because at this time, like I said, China is, taking over Hong Kong, but you still got this British feel to it, and the British version of Hong Kong feel to it but she's like looking at the Hong Kong, so she's missing the Hong Kong Snoopy, and they point that out. So you'll catch those little things when you watch the film again. So he brings the Snoopies to her, to Miss Chin, and then of course he tells her not to cry. And then you have this dinner scene between O and Talk, and they're learning each other's language, which I love. They learn how to.
It was a really weird scene because they were really kicking it off. It was like a bro moment,
Yeah. Well, I think it's to respect each other's career, that they're, you and I think a lot of loneliness plays in this. Like I said, they explain the loneliness of an expat who, someone who starts a restaurant or a business in another country. It's very lonely. It's tough enough, like I said, if you're in Singapore or whatever, at least you kind of look like the people, but imagine going over to America where you don't look like everybody and doing
be treated differently.
But with an expat, it is very lonely. Being an expat myself, I can tell you it's tough. Like, I remember going into stores and just they like a lot of the countries that I was in, like in the Middle East, they like to haggle. I don't like to haggle. I like Walmart and McDonald's. Like, it's $1.25. I give them $1.25, and that's it. But they used to tell me, say, if you don't haggle with them, you'll disrespect with them. I'm like, I don't really.
Whoa.
But I'll tell you, probably the worst incident I had in the store was, since I was in the Middle East, Persian rugs. I really wanted an authentic Persian rug for my brand new house. So I walked into the store and I just wanted, they're handcrafted, hand dyed. They're really nice. So this was a Turkish store owner, and he rolls the rug out, and there was a mistake on the rug. And it's about that big. That's the reason I hold my finger like that. And I looked at it, and I didn't want to hurt his feelings. And I just told him, and at the time I had a girlfriend back home. So I used her as an excuse not to buy the rug. Oh, he got so mad. And I was like, but luckily we left on good enough terms where I didn't have to get my head cut off or anything. But you know what I'm saying? It's really where you're like, man, because this is all these hours these guys are working on this rug, right, for me, and they make a mistake, and I can't take it home because of the mistake. Now back home, like I said, they did something like that, blah blah blah. I'm trying not to hurt their feelings, blah blah. I didn't want to say you made a mistake on the rug and cause a big scene. I'm used to the United States. We just blame our wives or our girlfriends.
Yeah.
But that's very disrespectful to them. And I didn't think about that, until later. But that's kind of what it's like you in being an expat, because you're not understanding the whole culture and what they're dealing with. It's like Malaysia had problems with the ending with this film. And you're thinking, this is a great film. Why would you have problems? Well, whatever. I don't understand your culture. It's like, well, we don't understand your culture.
It was interesting though how what it says. It was done as special request to show that crime doesn't pay. So does that mean that almost all Malaysian films will end with like a just ending like that?
I would say so.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know.
Well,
that.
It's like I said, Ghostbusters was banned in China because of the mention of ghost.
Whoa.
They had a problem with the issue because the ghost, that's demonic. Blah blah blah. I don't know. Anyways, that's for another story, another time. So.
I've learned so much today.
Okay. So we've got this dinner scene, and the first thing you do most people do, I don't. I try to learn hello, assalamu alaikum, assalam, those kind of greetings, shalom, things like that. That's what I try to learn when I try to learn a different language. Some people, however, want to know all the cuss words. So we get a Chinese interpretation of SOB and a Japanese interpretation of SOB, a Chinese interpretation of MF, and Japanese interpretation of MF. All the cuss words right there in that dinner scene. But it's a lovely scene. It really is. And then when the clock strikes midnight, it's time to do our business. And I think it borrows a little bit of the old westerns, like you don't shoot a man in the back. You have your code of honor. And like I said, this follows that kind of thing. Again, I have not read the honor book in a long time, so I can't tell you. But we're driving down the road, and and Tak are, describing the scenario, which will be the, as you would say, basically the standoff, or in the cowboy movies, the duel. Was it cowboy movies where they would call it the shootout? I cannot tell you. Gunfight.
Standoff.
The gunfight.
Yeah.
So, and like I said, like high noon, it's noon, right? Well, this is midnight, like high noon. So, do you remember talking about how he was going to set this scenario up for their final scene?
No.
Okay. Well, I don't think this is a real video game, but he's describing a video game where the characters have to find the weapons so that's how it's set up.
Oh, yeah.
Which makes sense. That's what I'm saying. They put a lot of thought into this because they thought, well, what if two young assassins, they would play video games, right? So that's what their connection would be. And so he uses this video game analogy. You go and find all the weapons in the barrels. But one thing I don't think Tak realizes is that this is a Chinese fireworks factory.
Might have been better to choose a different location.
You'd think he would, but let's say this is ego. Maybe his ego is so big, he doesn't realize that this is going to come. So, the final scene. Do you want to talk about it?
So, it's kind of hazy, but I remember them both being down whenever the fireworks do end up going off. Is that correct?
Right. And remember too, Miss Chin calls Albert Lee and tells him, who is starting to write a book about
right.
So she calls to meet him, and she's telling the story of the ending.
That's why it gets so hazy, is because you see it like 3 different times, and she tells the writer that Mr. O was killed.
Right.
And that bothers him, because whenever he goes to chase her out to see who she's with, he sees O. and he's faced with this predicament where he's like, all I need to do is finish my story, kind of thing, even though he sees him there. So I guess that it's kind of a cover for them to go into hiding and start their own life. And it's a way out for this guy to finish his story that he was super worried about. He was almost like at the point of ending his life that he couldn't finish this story. So it gives him an ending, it gives them a cover, and it shoots back to the scene and shows that it's the fireworks that end up disabling Talk and giving O the upper hand in the fight.
Right. And why is that?
Because of the epilepsy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, and again, that's why I like when films set that up, because there's a reason for this. And like when he first faces that, I think a lot of people think, oh, you're just trying to empathize with this psychotic maniac, right? But that's not the truth. It's like I said, it's his weakness and his vulnerability, and his ego is really, taken to stride. And that's the reason why I love this ending. But I'm going to go over a scene real quick before. Now she's explaining, and I believe this is all true, to Albert that she is telling how she already knew he was assassinated.
Yeah.
Basically, this ain't no dumb girl.
Pretty much how, like, she said, I think what she says is that her friend who was the housekeeper before was starting to catch on. And because she was so close with the previous housekeeper, she wanted to know what happened. She wants to know what's going on with this guy. She wants to know what happened to her friend. She wants to figure out all of these loose ends that have been left in her life because she's already involved at this point.
Right. And I love this thing because he's like, I love this part because he's like grabs her like, she's like, let me finish. And to me, and I think this is very important because it's like she throws it up on him too. Say, look, Talk notice me. WTF, why didn't you notice me? Basically, kind of thing. And, and of course, you're never going to get a straight answer about that. But to me, that's the reason why this is good writing for a character, because you understand she could be in love with both of them. And it explains why. There's not that many movies that have, and I'm just going to throw it out because I feel this is more of a love story than per se an action story. There's not.
I think it was good balancing both.
Yeah. And I think this is one of the few characters that you really understand what this character, the reason why she could be in love with both of these men. And I think, like I said, I think it's a metaphor of growing up and choosing the road you take. And I think fate chooses her road, because my personal belief, if Talk lived, I believe she would have gone off with Talk. And I think the writer is saying that's the way life is. And that's the reason why people end up on the roads they are on with it. That's why I like the idea and the concept and the story. I mean, like I said, there is some problem with like transitions. My biggest issue is flying to Korea, flying to Singapore, flying to Malaysia are not really set up very well. So I think the audience gets lost. And I think that's something they should have thought about, or to make it a little bit easier to follow.
I got a little lost when they started introducing like the writing aspects, like when the guys started writing their story. And the only other complaint I have about the movie, the only one, is that some of the soundtrack songs just did not belong there. They just didn't.
That's the thing. And of course, this could be a generation. If you guys know, back in the day, I don't know too. Here's another thing too, because like this is shown around the world, right? So I wonder if some of the music was made for like American audiences and British audiences,
And switched
then,
out and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing is too that is very nostalgic for me is the mini CD player.
Yeah, that was cool.
Like, if y'all know, there was CDs, and it was popular in America and Britain and stayed foremost. And during the time when we were switching from cassettes over to CDs, there was a big argument over to go to CD and mini CDs. Do you know why people wanted to go to mini CDs when it started out?
Is it because they weren't as big and bulky?
They could record.
Oh.
And I almost bought, because I had a choice. Like I said, I knew we were switching from tapes to CDs. And I went to a store, and like I named the thing, and I said I wanted a mini CD player because, you know, I was recording anyways. We were all recording on tape. It went from 8-track, analog, and then you downloaded the tape and that kind of thing. So we were coming into the CD era. It's like, what are you going to do? I mean, well, there is mini CDs. And so, of course, there was DATs. DATs were basically VHSs that were slowed down for recording. So a lot of people were doing DATs. And so I said, I'd like to get a mini CD player. And the guy said, yeah. I said, let me ask you a question. You know, I said, can these things record video? He said, yes. And I was like, I did not trust him. And I said, no. So I went to CD and I bought a CD recorder, and I'm glad I did, because I don't know what I would have done with the mini CD recorder. I probably would have to, you know, I bought a CD recorder, obviously, but there was like a time where people thought that they were going to mini CDs, and they did not last very long at all. I mean, they were gone, but seeing the mini CD player in this brings up nostalgia. Like I said, the acoustic thing, when I first watched it, I liked it. It didn't bother me. The classical music is, well, that was John Woo and Michael Bass. You know, that was just tell the story. All right, so we've explained the ending now. I love it. I love it. And I think I almost feel like the ending justified the movie. Like, if you didn't have this great ending, it would be just like any other Chinese action flick or any other American action flick. What's your take on all that?
I enjoyed the ending. It was, like I said, it did get a little confusing since we were doing the whole, like, showing the perspective, like, a few different times. It got a little confusing, but, like, once I had a little more time to process it, I really do like it. I do like the aspect of, like, the writer being like, okay, I'm gonna finish the story, but, like, just not really knowing what about it was true and what wasn't. Saying is that O seemed to still be alive, and I don't know. It left a lot of open to interpretation kind of things, I felt like.
Yeah, and I like that part, you know, where I hate movies where you're like, you got to explain everything to everybody, and it's like, I like questioning things. It's like a good Japanese horror film that's got a really good ending that kind of makes the movie good is Tommy, and I might get you into that. There's so many Tommy sequels which I just ignore, but the first one is whatever, you know. Of course, it's based on the Japanese manga because everything. I feel like this movie was trying to go for a little manga feel to it, but even manga has transitions where you can, you know, follow along. This really doesn't have any transitions, and I don't know why they didn't do that. I think it would make it easier. Like I said, Albert's character, I don't know how they would fix it, because the bottom line is he starts out and then we forget who he is until the ending. It's like, well, he's there at the beginning. Maybe they did it just so they'd have this big surprise ending. Maybe you'd have more film. But it's somewhere along the way, Albert's, if he's telling the story, he needs to be telling the story throughout the film. You know what I'm trying to say?
Right, yeah. It did definitely come in. I don't even want to say halfway. It was more towards the end of the movie.
Yeah.
That's why it got me so confused.
Right, because you're like,
now we have this new aspect of the whole thing.
Yeah, it's kind of like, oh, that's right. He's telling a story. We completely forget that he's telling a story. And that's probably to me the biggest negative, because it's kind of like anything else. Like, I don't know how you would fix it, to be honest with you. How you would get it where people will remember who he is. Because like when he's being an Interpol police, detective or whatever, I completely forgot that he's telling a story.
Yeah.
I totally forget that. And then, like I said, I don't like the transitions. And again, folks, there's 4-hour radius. But like I said, if you're coming into Hong Kong, it's going to get you 2 hours before you're going to get to go to the cab. So you're literally adding 6 hours to your flight.
Yeah.
Now,
but I mean, that's the stuff that they cut out of all movies. They're not going to show you waiting in customs or going to the bathroom.
Well, I understand that, but the point is like when he when he goes to get his revenge on his manager, it's like you feel like he just walked next door and
I don't think I really got that concept. Like, I knew it was taking places in different in different cities, but I don't think I really understood exactly why, because it doesn't it didn't have the transitions like you said. It felt like they were just kind of still in the same
and I think that countries are there is to help the market the movie, because this is a very international movie, and I love that part about it. Because like I said, if it wasn't for them marketing internationally, I probably wouldn't have got to see it. So, but like I said, Infernal Affairs comes out after this. If you want to watch his opus, Andy Lau's opus per se, that's what I would watch. Let everybody watch for the first time, but I get so mad. Do I like Infernal Affairs or the American version? I'm going to take Andy Lau's Infernal Affairs better. It's the two male characters that are connected in it are so better versus Mark Wahlberg and Matt Damon and Leonardo DiCaprio and all those people they put every big star they name over it, and it's like, hey, we bought this Chinese flick. We just need a bunch of big actors to play these Chinese stars. Okay, let's get everybody we can. They call everybody in the world. There's Matt Damon, Mark Wahlberg, Leonardo DiCaprio, Jack Nicholson, you name it. They're in it, and they're playing all these characters, and you're like, well, I don't need that. Just the connection between Andy Lau's character and the other character in the film are good enough for me to like the film and what their connection is. And so there you go, folks. All right, so let's get into recommendations. How's your recommendations on this film? Who would you recommend this film?
I actually enjoy this film. I would recommend this to someone, I don't know, just someone looking for an action film with a bit of a story behind it. I did enjoy it.
I would, definitely would. If you're into the genre, I definitely would recommend it. If you're like the John Woo films, you like the Michael Bay films, you probably definitely like these films. I think this is a little smarter than Michael Bay.
Mm-hmm.
I think
that's what I was gonna say. I think I would also recommend this to people who like movies with like a strong female protagonist character, because there was a lot of like different choices and just things that she did that were really important in this movie. So I think people who like that aspect of movies
and then another thing too, I put it as a learning process. If you're going to throw a strong female character in here, explain why she's that way.
Yeah. I feel like with the explaining they did do, they saved most of it for the end,
Yeah.
during most of the movie, you were like, why is she doing what she's doing, you know? And then at the end, you're like, oh, okay, I get
Yeah,
it.
they set all that up. It's not that's a bad thing about American movies. Like, she's good at it because she's female. That doesn't work. No, it does. You don't do that. I mean, another good, if you guys want to watch a good, strong female character that was well written, and it was totally influenced this genre, is La Femme Nikita. If you watch La Femme Nikita, it sets up, and again, Americans stole that film and they called it something else with Bridget Fonda. But if you watch the original La Femme Nikita, you will understand how to do a successful and good female action star. If you watch Michelle Yeoh, now they're just getting so stupid like Steven Seagal films are. Why didn't Steven Seagal survive? Because he was the first Mary Sue. Okay, Steven Seagal, everything was perfect. He could do everything, and it's like you cannot relate to a character that is completely 100% perfect. You know, even Bruce Lee would add weaknesses to his character so you can relate to him. Steven Seagal would be like, what? You can't make a funny movie about me? You know, it's like every action star that did survive, like Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, they learned to laugh at themselves and embrace their weaknesses. If you don't do that, you just become uninteresting. I think Carrie Fisher said it best when she said, you know, do you remember Elvis? Did he die with drugs? Yes, but he was very, very interesting. And, you know, that's the whole thing. Is like, you have to have that connection with your audience. And like I said, this film has that. And I think that's the problem, is Miss Chen is our eyes through the film. And I think if she was telling the story, I think this film would be perfect. I think the Albert telling the story, it hurts because you completely forget that he's there. And he's also a good actor, and he's kind of wasted in this, because if you watch Contract Killers, one of these days I'll get you to watch that. He's in Contract Killers, and he's probably the best person in Contract Killers with Jet Li, and Jet Li is a great action star. So but anyways, I love this film. If you're into that genre, like the John Woo action star films, like Killers with John Woo and films like that, or even Face Off with Nicolas Cage and John Travolta, if you like those kind of films, this is that kind of film. I think you need to watch it and do it. And I know these kind of like are, what do you say, past their prime now, but I still hold on to some. There's a diamond rough in all of them. I guess you would say.
It was good. Like, I can usually tell when I'm watching a movie from super, like, what, this was released about 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Usually I'll like, I don't know how to say it. It's just, there's just a vibe about it to where I'm like, oh, I'm watching an older movie, you know, that's in the back of my head. But this one just, it felt so real and current, and, you know, I liked it. I enjoyed it.
Well, I'm surprised about that, because as soon as I see the mini CD player, I know.
Well, of course there was parts where you would be like, okay, well, this was made a while ago. But I mean, I guess like the themes and the way, because I just watched one of the Hitman's Bodyguard movies with Ryan Reynolds, and there was a lot of, you know, it felt like I was just watching one of those movies. That was, yeah,
and that's a good example. I forgot about that one. I actually own that one. So, and I like it because I like the Samuel Jackson, Ryan Reynolds. What would you say? Their chemistry is really good in that kind of thing. But regardless, so, oh yeah. So guys, check it out. It's, you know, we'll send you a link. You guys have a wonderful day. Thank you for subscribing, liking, sharing on the Coconut Daddy Movie Production Reviews. And you guys have a wonderful day.
Bye.
Bye.